You ever notice how some people move through life like they're reading from a script they never wrote? They wake up, check their phone, feel that familiar weight in their chest, scroll through someone else's highlight reel, feel smaller, get dressed, go to work, come home, repeat, and somewhere in the back of their mind, there's this quiet voice asking, is this it? Not loud enough to interrupt, just loud enough to ache. Here's what nobody talks about: the space between where you are and where you thought you'd be isn't usually dramatic. It's not a catastrophe. It's quieter than that. It's the slow drift, the imperceptible current pulling you sideways while you're busy treading water. You're not failing spectacularly. You're just not steering. And here's the thing that'll mess with you if you let it sink in: most people spend their entire lives fighting battles they can't win while ignoring the wars they could have ended years ago. Think about the last time you felt genuinely stuck. Not inconvenienced. Stuck. Maybe it was a job that drained you. Maybe a relationship that stopped growing but wouldn't quite die. Maybe just this generalized feeling that you're capable of more but can't seem to access it. Now think about where your mind went. Did you catalog everything outside yourself? The economy, your industry, your boss, your parents, your metabolism, your education, or lack of it, the algorithm, the system, timing, luck. It's not that these things don't matter. They do. But here's the uncomfortable truth: you can be absolutely right about all of them and still be completely powerless. Because being right doesn't move you forward. There's this thing that happens when we're in pain, and I mean psychological pain, the kind that comes from unfulfilled potential or chronic disappointment. Our brains do something clever. They find explanations that protect us from the scariest possibility of all, that we could have done something different. It's a defense mechanism. A good one, actually, because if the reason you're stuck is entirely outside your control, you don't have to face the possibility that you've been standing in your own way. The economy is broken. Okay, maybe it is, but you still have to live in it. Your parents messed you up. Maybe they did, but they're not here right now making this decision for you. The game is rigged. In some ways, absolutely, but you're still playing it whether you acknowledge that or not. Here's what I've noticed watching people for years: the ones who break through, who actually change their circumstances, they all share this one trait: they have an almost obsessive focus on the razor-thin margin where their actions actually matter. Not where they should matter, where they do matter. Let me give you an example that might hit close to home. You know that friend who's been talking about writing a book for 5 years? They've got legitimate reasons why it hasn't happened. No time, demanding job, family obligations. They're not wrong about any of it, but they also haven't written a single page. Meanwhile, someone else you know, maybe less talented, maybe less educated, just published their second book. It's not a masterpiece, but it exists. What's the difference? The second person stopped negotiating with reality. They stopped waiting for perfect conditions. They found their 2%, that sliver of control in a mostly uncontrollable situation, and they squeezed it until something happened. 2% sounds pathetic, doesn't it? Feels almost insulting to suggest that's all you've got. But 2% compounded over time? That's not math. That's alchemy. Here's where it gets interesting, and by interesting, I mean uncomfortable. Psychologists did this experiment decades ago. They took two groups and gave them an impossible puzzle. Group A could stop the noise in their headphones by pressing a button. Group B had the same button, but it didn't work. They suffered the noise randomly, no matter what they did. Phase 2. Both groups got a new puzzle. This one was actually solvable. Easy, even. Group A, who'd learned their actions mattered. They solved it quickly. Group B mostly didn't even try. They'd learned that effort was pointless. So they sat there, in solvable suffering, because their nervous system had been trained that nothing they did would matter. The researchers called it learned helplessness. But here's what keeps me up at night: you don't need a lab experiment to learn this. Life teaches it to you for free. Every time you tried and failed. Every time you spoke up and got shut down. Every time you reached for something and got your hand slapped. Your nervous system was taking notes, building a case, collecting evidence for a conclusion. Don't bother. And the truly insidious part? Once you've learned it, you stop seeing the doors that are actually open. Because why would you? Doors are for people with keys, and you've learned you don't have any. So you sit in the cage, even after the door swings open. I see this everywhere now that I know to look for it. People suffering in situations they could walk away from. Not easily, nothing's easy. But physically, logistically possible. And they don't. Because somewhere along the way, they internalized the lesson that they're not the kind of person who gets to leave. The question isn't whether you've learned some helplessness. You have. We all have. The question is, are you willing to unlearn it? Because here's the thing about that button in the experiment, it didn't work for Group B. But in your life, some of your buttons do work. You just have to be willing to find out which ones. And that requires something most people aren't willing to do, taking responsibility for the experiment. Not responsibility for the past. Not blame. Responsibility for the next move. There's a difference, and it matters. Blame looks backward and finds reasons. Responsibility looks forward and finds options. Let me paint you a picture. You're at a job you hate. You've been there for years. The pay is mediocre. The culture is toxic. You've watched less competent people get promoted because they play politics better than you do. You could make this about 1,000 things outside yourself, and some of them would be true, but none of them change the fact that you wake up there tomorrow. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What's your 1%? Not how do I fix everything? Not how do I revolutionize my career? What is the smallest viable action that moves the needle even slightly in a direction that doesn't make you hate yourself? Maybe it's updating your resume. Not sending it anywhere. Just updating it so it's ready if an opportunity appears. Maybe it's having one honest conversation with your boss about what a path forward looks like. Maybe it's just deciding that you're going to stop participating in the gossip that makes the culture worse, even if you can't make it better. 1%. That's it. Because here's what 1% does, it breaks the pattern. It sends a signal to your nervous system that you're not completely helpless, that your actions can create outcomes. And that signal? That's the crack in the foundation of learned helplessness. You don't need to believe you can change everything. You just need to prove to yourself you can change something. I've worked with people who were convinced they were stuck. Utterly, permanently stuck. And you know what the breakthrough was almost every time? Not a big intervention. Not a massive life overhaul. It was them cleaning their desk. Sounds stupid, right? You're drowning in existential crisis and I'm talking about desk organization. But think about what that action does. You identify a problem, chaos in your immediate environment. You take action. The action produces a result. The result is visible, immediate, undeniable. For the first time in maybe months, maybe years, you have evidence that you can affect your reality. And that evidence is rocket fuel. Because learned helplessness isn't logical. You can't argue with it. You have to disprove it. With evidence. Real, tangible evidence that the world responds to you. Start small. Stupidly small. Embarrassingly small. The goal isn't the result. The goal is proving to your nervous system that the button works. Once you've got that, once you've internalized that your actions can matter, then you can start expanding the radius of control. But you have to start with something you can actually do. Today. Now. Not someday. Not when conditions are better. Now. Here's the framework. First, identify what you actually control. Not what you wish you controlled. Not what you feel entitled to control. What you actually control. Your thoughts. Your attention. Your next action. That's pretty much the list. Everything else? Influence at best. Lottery at worst. Second, stop pouring energy into what you don't control. This is harder than it sounds because we're addicted to it. We love discussing politics we can't change, people we can't fix, pasts we can't undo. It feels like we're doing something. But we're not. We're just burning fuel. Third, pour everything you've got into that narrow band of actual control. Your preparation. Your consistency. Your standards. Your response to what happens. This is where you live now. This is your kingdom. It's small, but it's yours. Fourth, repeat until the evidence overwhelms the old story. Because that's what learned helplessness is, a story your nervous system tells based on old data. You need new data. Better data. Data that says, I tried. It worked. I'm not helpless. Will it change everything overnight? No. Will it change something? Yes. And something is the foothold. Something is the beginning. Something is proof of life. Look, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that positive thinking changes reality or that you can manifest your dreams or any of that. The world is hard. Systems are rigged. Luck matters. Privilege is real. All of that is true. And none of it changes what you do next. You still have to decide. Do you focus on the 98% you can't control? Or the 2% you can? Because here's what I've learned. The people who actually change their lives aren't the ones with the most control. They're the ones who become obsessed with using the little control they have. They're not captains of massive ships with full crews and GPS and calm seas. They're people in rowboats, in storms, who decided they'd rather choose a direction and fight for it than drift and complain about the current. And slowly, over time, they stop being passengers in their own lives. They start steering. Not perfectly, not easily, but intentionally. And that makes all the difference. So here's my question for you. What's your 2%? What's the thing you've been avoiding because it's too small to matter, but deep down you know it's the first step you've been refusing to take? Find it. Do it. Today. Not because it'll solve everything, because it'll prove that your buttons still work. And once you remember that, everything changes.